This week, globalheadwinds.com turns its gaze towards a question that is quietly reshaping the world's geopolitics. Is the United States under President Donald Trump trying to reclaim lost global influence, or is it preparing to step away from the world altogether? To understand this moment, we must first acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Over the last 2 decades, American global influence has been steadily declining, and the primary reason is not military defeat or economic collapse, but the rise of a new superpower, China. Yet China's methods of expansion is fundamentally different. Beijing does not arrive with aircraft carrier strike groups or ultimatums wrapped in sanctions. Instead, it comes bearing loans, infrastructure projects, and commercial partnerships. For smaller and struggling nations, this often feels like relief, at least in the short run. But today's discussion is not about China's long-term coercive strategies. It is about how the United States, through its own choices, may be accelerating its loss of global influence. Consider the sweeping sanctions imposed on Russia. While intended to punish Moscow, these measures have triggered an unintended consequence. Nations across the world are rethinking their dependence on the US dollar. Gold, once seemed as old-fashioned, is now increasingly viewed as a safer reserve asset. Then there is a quiet retreat of the American soft power. Valued US aid programs across the Pacific Rim and in parts of Africa were halted. Even America's most dependable allies have felt the strain. President Trump's policies have unsettled Western Europe, a bloc that once formed the backbone of US-led global order. Diplomatic trust has frayed, and strategic alignment has weakened. And then came the dramatic episode in Venezuela. Following the high-stakes operations involving President Nicolas Maduro, Washington's tone shifted sharply. Suddenly, Denmark was being urged to hand over Greenland. Military options were openly hinted at. What once sounded implausible became official rhetoric. The result? A widening chasm between the United States and Europe. This divide deepens further with America's desire to distance itself from the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change. By stepping back from the global climate commitments, the US risks isolating itself from the European allies who are leading the charge on climate action. Presidents, of course, come and go. But will the next one reverse this course? The answer is far from clear. On one hand, President Trump's coercive approach unsettles many Americans. On the other, a substantial segment of the population supports it wholeheartedly. And beyond electoral politics lie deeper forces, particularly the interests of powerful American oil corporations. Venezuelan petroleum deposits have long been a coveted prize. Greenland too has sat for decades on the wish list of US strategic planners for its location and increasingly for its mineral wealth. So what is America truly aiming for? Globalheadwinds.com believes the answer lies in a recalibrated version of isolation. Not withdrawal, but selective engagement. President Trump appears determined to reduce America's involvement in global crisis, a demand echoed loudly by his MAGA base. At the same time, he seeks to reinforce the Monroe Doctrine in spirit, if not in name, ensuring that no nation in the Western Hemisphere pursues policies deemed hostile to US interests. Post-Venezuela, warnings have been issued to Cuba, to Colombia, and even to Mexico. The message is unmistakable. America's neighborhood will remain under close watch. Beyond the Western Hemisphere, however, the appetite for engagement seems to fade. Except, of course, in the Middle East, where vast oil reserves continue to exert an irresistible pull on American strategy. The same commitment is noticeably absent in the Western Pacific. The South China Sea simmers. The China-Taiwan standoff grows more volatile by the day. Yet the United States appears increasingly hesitant to invest political capital there. What emerges is a clear pattern. America is aligning its strategic priorities with its commercial interests, particularly oil and rare earth minerals, resources believed to exist in abundance in places like Greenland. Whether future American presidents will reverse or reinforce the course charted by Captain Trump, a course that risks ceding global influence to China and Russia, is a question that remains unanswered. But it is a question that globalheadwinds.com will continue to watch closely.